Are you ready to learn? Because my super experienced guests are ready to share some really valuable information. Make sure and listen all the way to the end to get help and support. So let's start with the best audio experience.
Hello guys, welcome to our show. Today we discuss about AI, how you can implement AI to create your B2B content strategy. I think today it's hard to ignore AI. That was simple yesterday, impossible tomorrow. We need to do it. It doesn't matter what kind of business you have, you need to do it today because tomorrow your competitors will replace you. So let's learn more about that. I'm so excited to discuss this topic with Nick Bhavsar. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Anatoly? Good to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you, to meet you, to learn from you. Nick, before we start, just tell more about yourself, experience, background, and how to pronounce your second name better than me.
Sure, that's the hardest part. So it's Bhavsar. The H is silent. So Nick Bhavsar. But quick background. So kind of an engineering background. I came from electrical engineering and worked for Intel for a number of years, designed servers. So I'm very sort of a left brain marketer. And then I cut my teeth at a company called SolarWinds, where I led product marketing. Went through a successful IPO. It was a fun part to get my first sort of take into positioning and messaging as a product marketer, and then jumped over to a company called Spiceworks, where we were also in the network management space, and I led revenue marketing there, demand generation, sales enablement, a little bit of product marketing, and it was a ton of fun just to continue to help that grow. And then I led two VC-backed companies as a head of marketing. The last one that I did full-time was a company called Levelset, where they had a successful exit to a company called Procore. So it's fun to be part of that was more of an SMB type of transaction. And then today I own my own consulting practice. So it's solopreneur kind of consulting. I teach a little bit at Kellogg as a program leader in their digital marketing strategies course. And eager to chat with you about ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools. There's so much changing in the world right now.
Yeah, agree. Love it. I think it's part of our occupation to adapt, to implement, to go ahead, because technologies change fast, but human psychology is the same. So we need to consider new technologies to satisfy intent. Because, my loving books were written many years ago. Jack London wrote great books. Dale Carnegie, Josh Sugarman wrote a book about why people buy and how to retain them longer on your content. It's interesting that he wrote this book about marketing, but today we have digital marketing, and it's the same psychology, why people consume content. I can relate all these methods to video content, to audio podcasts, because people are the same, but technologies are different. That's why we talk today about GPT-4. And can you tell me how to use it right? Because, I see when people use such tools by using generic methods, they can use the same like Ahrefs, SEMrush, many other tools. They find high volume keywords and think, wow, I want to get this traffic, I want to rank well. But you need to consider you're not alone. High volume keywords are overwhelmed and overpriced. It's hard to get them. It's the same like if I want to rank with keyword SEO, I need to compete with Neil Patel, Ahrefs, Moz, many other great resources. And even if I can find resources and methods to outrank them, can I sell with this keyword? It's not related to my main services. So can you tell about B2B content strategy? How to create the right one by using GPT-4?
Yeah, it's a great prompt, in fact, is the way we would say it. So appreciate the advanced notice. So, I think you mentioned something that really resonates, which is the fundamentals of marketing. They haven't changed, and they probably never will change. It's more the execution and the ability for us to be much more productive. So when it comes to B2B content strategy, when I talk to clients, one of the first things that we have to understand is what the buying committee is. And a buying committee is just a fancy word to say in B2B organizations, there's typically anywhere between 7 to 20 different people involved in a complex enterprise purchase. So it could be an IT person, it could be their legal counsel, it could be the finance person, could be business department leaders, it could be procurement, and the list goes on and on. And just as an interesting fun fact, that has actually increased quite a bit during the course of COVID. So it used to be around 7 to 8 people involved in a buying decision-making process prior to COVID. And now for enterprise sales, that number's anywhere between 14 to 20. And there's some sort of statistics that are showing that that's the people that typically the sales team will know about, but there's oftentimes many more people in the company or in the prospect company that you don't even know about. So that's the first starting point. And so one of the things you have to do is sit down and say, who are the different people involved in that decision-making process? Who's the person that would initiate the deal? Who's the person that would be the end user of the application? Who would be someone that might influence the deal, might not be involved directly, but is influencing solving this problem? Who is the person that makes the financial decision? And then who are potential gatekeepers? And so the core to starting with the B2B strategy is really saying, let's map out and understand who those different buyers are and thinking about the titles of what each of those folks are. So it's a little bit different in the consumer space, right? Where you tend to have just a single person, like let's say you're buying $50 item on Amazon or some e-commerce site. You don't involve a large complex buying committee, but in the enterprise space, if you're buying some $50,000 software or something like that, there's a lot of people involved. So I think that's the first part, Anatoly, is just making sure you have a lot of different people and understand who would buy your software or solution.
Yeah, nice. Once I found when Elon Musk shared on Twitter how he used ChatGPT to ask detailed questions. So he asked with many details as much as possible. And I found that many people use ChatGPT or any other AI tools by asking simple questions. For example, write me article about weight loss, or I don't know how to earn money online. But if you ask generic questions, you can get generic replies. So Elon Musk was specific, and that was before he started to hate ChatGPT. When we knew that he withdrew like $100 million, and today, after investing in Twitter, I think we can see that. That was not good decision from Elon Musk's side, but we can criticize very successful man. Anyway, I'm interested about asking the right questions. We have AI tools. Elon Musk can ask detailed questions, and people can use some prompts to ask these questions. Can you tell how to find the balance between asking hard questions and asking about your buying persona, because each case is different, each project is different, and any tips about that?
Yeah. So one of the places we start on the buying committee is using ChatGPT. You can actually ask it. So let's use an example. Let's say we're developing we're trying to promote a network monitoring software, some classic sort of enterprise IT application. So you can ask ChatGPT, give me the list of the personas that would be in the buying committee for network management software. It'll list out, a system administrator, an IT representative, a security manager, legal, procurement. And so you take all of those sort of personas and those titles, and now you start to dive into each of those different personas, and you think about the stages that you go through in the buying cycle. And this is where ChatGPT can be really powerful. And one of the things that I often help clients with is we think about something that's called jobs to be done. And this is a famous framework that actually came out of Harvard professor Clayton Christensen sort of coined this phrase. And if you're interested, there's a really interesting YouTube video where he talks about the job that McDonald's hires or if you're a customer that you hire McDonald's to do when you buy a milkshake. It's a famous case where, it's not at all intuitive, that it's not because you're hungry. It's not because you're looking for a snack. It's in fact, for many people, they buy a milkshake when they're on their way to work because it just keeps them from fidgeting in their hand. And so they've actually designed that milkshake cup to fit in the cup holder to be very ergonomic and just the right amount of weight. So really fascinating case. But what we have to do in B2B is say, okay, across those different personas that we just had ChatGPT list out, and then across each of those different buying stages, from the early parts of top of funnel to the middle to the last parts. Now we can ask, what are the jobs to be done for each of those different stages in those personas? And the really interesting part is if you correctly phrase those jobs, that's the prompt into ChatGPT. So I'll give you an example. A good prompt, or at least a good job to be done in the network monitoring space, for example, might be, I'm trying to minimize the time it takes to look across all of my network devices and determine which one of them might have a security flaw, right? And so that's a prompt that we can then put into ChatGPT, and you can ask it, write me a blog post that would detail out how a network security administrator would go about scanning their networks and determining which potential devices have security flaws. So now we have a very detailed prompt that is for the top of funnel by stage, specifically for a system admin or a network security person. And so we have kind of one block in this matrix of personas and stages. And ChatGPT can do a very good job of writing that blog post. And that's the starting point. And I think what many people forget is you often have to take the starting point, and then you have to iterate based off of it. So one of the things you can do is once it provides that response, you can actually you can provide it some of the copy from some of your website and say, this is the tone or the brand that I typically talk about. And then you can take that blog post and have it regenerated in your tone, in your brand voice as well. And so you can continue to have these iterative sort of cycles. And at the end of this, you have a pretty detailed blog post, one for that persona, for that specific stage, and specifically for that sort of job to be done. And so that's the exercise then. Then you continue to go back to ChatGPT and have it write other jobs to be done. And you can give it a couple of examples and then go across all of your different personas and across each of your different stages. And at the end of that, you've got quite a comprehensive content strategy that ChatGPT has generated. And what's been fun is now there are also some tools that will help you try to optimize the language that you write in, for example, with call to action, with different headlines. And so you can play around with some of these other generative AI tools. I think AnyWord is one example that I've just recently heard of that can tell you which headlines will be the most engaging. And so we're taking the guesswork out of the creation and the likelihood that these blog posts and articles and ebooks will be successful. And that's the sort of crux of content generation when it comes to B2B. It's a fascinating world. I think what we'll see is, it used to be you'd have large teams of content marketers. And I think we'll start to see some consolidation where you have, maybe a little more productive, more senior people doing content generation, because you can generate so much content with the right approach. It's a fascinating time to be involved in this.
Nice. Yeah, valuable. It's interesting. Even my AI tool on Miss.com, can help to create content at scale for all website pages. But in my tool, you can find golden button. Guys, it's not golden button. It's just, I found that any AI tool is the best rewriting tool ever. But rewriting, not writing something new, valuable, unique. So ChatGPT can generate great text. My tool can generate great text. The difference in my tool, you need to add your website. That's it. And this tool will find all pages on your website, create content, titles, descriptions, H1, context. So you don't need to search for pages that have low performance. So you can use my tool. Even if you use ChatGPT or Jasper or any other tool, you need to understand it's only rewriting. And you can't share something new. Google cares about something new. Even if Google decided to change the policy that you can use AI tools, but you can use in the right way to create something new. And I found many content creators overuse ChatGPT. They generate a lot more than they need, because in the end, we need to provide something new. Can you tell how to find the balance between overusing and using that can help to create high quality content.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. These tools are extremely powerful. They can generate lots and lots of content, but it still has to be, Google's algorithms are all trying to figure out if a human is going to interact with this content. It's not being written for the search engine, it's not being written for other folks. And so the key is being able to continue to have it right for a human. And if a human clicks on it, follows up on it, then that will ultimately optimize Google's algorithms and others. And so ChatGPT can be a very effective tool, as are some of the other generative AI tools. But it's important to remember that they still have to be engaging by a human. So just having 1,000-page, blog post or something like that's not going to be very effective because no one will actually read it, even though you can generate that level of content relatively easily.
I think, people, you need to understand one thing. If you generate this text with basic prompts, 1,000 others will do the same, if not millions, because 100 million users are on this tool for 2 months. I don't know how many we have now, but a lot. And most of them use generic strategies. So you need to use in the right way, because if you use generic commands, prompts, you can get generic content that others will do the same. Nick, I'm interested about creating high quality content. It's interesting that high quality is subjective. Sometimes I can open the top 10 results and see simple design, nothing special, but it's ranking well. The value is quality because it can help support me. Sometimes I can feel, wow, awesome design, the best design that I can see, but context is poor, nothing special, low. So can you tell how to create high quality content today from your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing in marketing that we strive to try to do is it's very cliche, but we try to tell stories. And because that's just for thousands of years, that's how humans have told each other. That was the first viral marketing was, caveman tells another caveman, don't go over this hill because there's a cliff. It's a story, right? So we have to do the same thing in marketing. And I think a lot of times we forget some of the fundamentals of storytelling. And I'm a big fan of some of the fairy tale, old, children's fairy tale approaches to storytelling. So I'll give you an example. It could, once upon a time, which is the background and situation of what's going on, something happens, right? And it could be, let's tie this together. Maybe we'll write a story on the fly. So once upon a time, you have thousands of network devices, and you're trying to manage multiple sites across, your company. And then something happens. There's an outage at one of the companies, and your employees can't get access to some of their devices. And so that's sort of the background, the climax, or some situational sort of occurrence. And then you have a climax, which is the hero, network engineer, network system administrator, for example, has to jump into action and take some action. And so they can find a hero, and the hero is usually your company, the vendor. So they find the vendor and they find a solution where they can replicate data across multiple sites and do that instantly if one of the sites goes down. And then they get to see, the fairy tale ends by showing how the hero was successful. They're able to continue to have their employees successful, even though there's an outage at one of the sites, and maybe they're promoted for doing this. And so sometimes we forget that approach of storytelling is what makes content really resonate. And with ChatGPT and other AI tools, we're going to be able to generate a lot of content, but it still requires sort of thinking about things in a very compelling way, and understanding what your positioning is relative to other companies' positioning. Now, all that said, as I mentioned, there are some powerful AI tools that can help you, for example, determine the best headlines, determine the best ad copy that you can create, test out different imagery, A/B test emails. So we're starting to see a lot of different tools come out to help you accelerate, how to determine what's engaging. But as an executive in the marketing space, I always look for, what is that story that is simple enough that one of our customers can tell another customer, because I think that's what always resonates with people.
Yeah, I agree. Storytelling For example, once I watched a presentation about new Apple Watch when Tim Cook shared 3 stories about this Apple Watch. After that, I bought 3 pairs for me, for my son, for my wife, because these guys probably kill me if I buy only for myself. But
Right.
so I bought 3 items, but because of getting the feeling of owning this Apple Watch. Tim Cook didn't share features, didn't share that how great this Apple Watch can be, but he shared 3 stories how this Apple Watch can help some people. And I got this feeling, wow, I can own this Apple Watch. I can have it, I can simplify my life, decide some problems, many things. After getting this feeling, I bought 3 items. Can you tell me how to create this feeling? Because I see when many websites, webmasters, marketers, they think a lot about features. No, but probably other products have these features. I'm pretty sure that Samsung, other brands have great features as well. But all big brands are good by sharing stories. So can you tell how to use storytelling style in the right way to create this feeling of owning something?
Sure. So Tim Cook probably learned it from Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs, in fact, worked for Pixar for some period of time. And there's a gentleman, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who was the chief storyteller at Pixar. And so I remember he spoke at a Topo conference. This was some years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and he stands up on stage and he says, I hate to boast, but I'm the greatest storyteller that ever lived. And man, you're like, oh, what is this guy saying? Like, there's no way this can be the case. And he's the person, or at least him and his team, are the people that wrote some of the story, Toy Story, Ratatouille, Up, some of the most famous movies out of Pixar. And he proceeded to go through and share a formula that they use at Pixar to tell their stories, a very simple formula. And in fact, he showed how Steve Jobs followed the same exact formula to share to when he announced the first iPhone. And the format is essential. See if I can remember this off the top of my head. It's essentially you introduce this concept. So the way Steve Jobs did it was he introduced the notion of what's wrong with today's phones. And at the time, right, this was 2008, 2009. You have these phones, their screens are really small. The keyboards, you have to type 4 means an F, and it was just a horrible experience. So he walks you through the emotional high and then the emotional low, and emotional high, emotional low, emotional high, emotional low. And then he presents this, and so you're intrigued at what this looks like. So he introduces the iPhone and then says, today's phones have terrible screens. And he shows a picture of what the screen is, like half the size of the screen. Remember those Nokia phones that were horrible. And then he shows the iPhone. The entire thing is a screen. And so you're emotional high, emotional low. And then he says, typing on these phones is a horrible experience. You're trying to type numbers to get letters. And so he shows you the emotional low of how bad the phones are and what's difficult about them. Then he shows what the iPhone looks like. There's a keyboard right on the screen. You can type whenever you need it. And then he shows the internet speed is terrible. You can't look at a website. You pull up a CNN or any of the websites, it's like text. It's not actual graphics. So then he shows what it looks like on the iPhone, and he pulls up New York Times, and you can see full-blown, website pages. And so he shows this over and over again, and that's what intrigues you, is you're at the edge of your seat saying, what's next? Like, yes, he's absolutely right. These things that I want to be able to do, they're horrible in the way that they're done today. And by the middle of the conversation, you can't wait to see what this device can do. And it's not simply the features. He's really pulling the emotional heartstrings of how this is a terrible experience. And I think especially in B2B, we forget this oftentimes, is that people buy emotionally first, then they justify it rationally. And so as marketers, we have to make sure that we tell these stories in an effective way where we show, what is so broken about, for example, network monitoring software, or whatever the thing is that you're selling, and then show how it's so broke and show how your solution is completely different. Show what else is completely broken, and it's almost to the point where you can't believe that people would do things this way, and then show what the alternative is with your approach. And that emotional roller coaster is what keeps us just absolutely intrigued. and we have to see what's next. And we empathize with that main character that went through this. And so one quick side note, the chief storyteller sort of shows this, example of the iPhone, and then he shows the movie Up, which was a Pixar movie, Up. And if you're not familiar with it, in the first 5 minutes of this movie, there's a character that they introduce, the old man that lives in his house, and he meets his beautiful wife, and they get married. And then fast forward a few years later, she has cancer, unfortunately dies. And then he lives alone, and he has this miserable experience. And they walk you through, this is a children's movie, right? And so they walk you through this emotional experience, and it's the high, it's the low, it's the high, it's the low, it's the high, it's the low. And by the first 5 minutes, you can't turn that movie off. You have to see how this thing ends. And that's what effective storytelling is. I think we forget that in B2B, and it's an incredibly important part to remember.
Yeah, you remind me, Jim Edwards. He worked 10 years in Business Insider. When he spoke on my podcast, he told me success of Business Insider depends on creating non-boring content. Because most business content is boring. Yeah, it's true. For example, if I take a new book, Jack London, I don't know, name them, many great authors, I can feel that I'm part of the journey. I can live on this book. I can forget about water, meal, sleep, because I'm on this book. But many business books are great for sleeping. When you have problems with sleep, you can take a new book, read it, sleep well all night, forget anything from this book. And it's the same with any content online. 80% of users bounce YouTube video in first 20 seconds, because it's boring. If I watch Mr. Beast, for me, it's hard to bounce this video, but many content is great for sleeping, for it's boring, even if it's valuable, because we need to share some entertainment as well. I'm interested about sharing this non-boring content, how to create non-boring content in B2B field, because it's not only about sharing value, it's more about retaining users, because most users are busy and they have no time to consume all content. So they open, if you can't hook their attention, they leave fast. Any insights about that?
Yeah, there's another great framework in a book. There's a guy, Donald Miller, that came up with, I think it's Simple Branding, I forget the exact name of the book, but he articulates essentially the hero's journey. And again, in that example, he cites the hero is not you as the vendor, it's your customer. And so he walks you through, articulate who that, and introduce that hero and show what they have a challenge with. And what we want is, it's interesting content if I can see myself in that person. Now, it could be a blog post, could be a video, could be a webinar, could be a lot of different formats, but I need to see myself. Again, we'll use the example of network system administrator. If I can recognize some of the attributes that this person has and see myself in them, and then understand and empathize with the challenge that they're facing, and have this sort of Me Too moment where you're saying, I've got that problem too. I've been there. I know how frustrating that is. And then watch as they go through this experience and trying to figure out the solution, and then introduce your solution as the guide. Your solution, and you as a vendor, you're not the hero, you're the guide. You're the trusty sort of guide that helps them navigate this process. You're the Yoda to the Luke Skywalker in the hero's journey. And so you provide a plan. Here's these 5 steps. If you do these 5 things, you can save the universe and the empire. And so it's the same thing in B2B. It's no different. It's network security person has this challenge. They meet a guide. He gives them a plan. He avoids catastrophe and it hits towards what success looks like. And we forget that it's that simple to tell these stories. And when you engage is when you can see yourself in that person. And so you have to understand that person. You have to empathize with that person. Usually you have to have talked and interviewed and understood that buyer directly. And then you can use tools like ChatGPT to accelerate your ability to articulate the story. But you have to have that sort of central ethos of what the story is to be successful. So I think that's the part we can't forget.
Yeah, nice, valuable. Okay, let's talk about the parameter EEAT: expertise, experience, authority, trust. For example, my son, he never asks me to buy new sneakers. He always tells me buy Nike. Always. I don't know why. For me, I don't care a lot about brand because I like quality. I can buy Reebok, Nike, Puma because I care about quality. So we are different customers. He wants to get Nike. And I tried to research why. Because on his school, if you have Nike, you can relate yourself with Cristiano Ronaldo because he loves playing soccer. And people get respect of having new Nike. I don't know why, so probably kid
Right.
stuff. And in our course, Lily Ray wrote checklist about parameters EEAT. I don't want to say how much I paid her, a lot, but anyway, this course costs like $10-20, not a lot, but I've learned from Lily Ray and many other experts who share lessons on my course about importance of creating brand awareness. So can you tell how it's important to create brand awareness like Nike, Apple, many other brands can create? And I'm interested about this parameter EEAT. What do you think? For example, if I'm going to read a new book, I usually check out offers because many great books, a lot of great books, but I have no time to figure out is it good or not. But if I know the offer, I know, yeah, it's valuable. And some books are great books. People don't know about them. And for example, this book, a great example. Lloyd Richardson published book 11 years ago, and he spent 14 years to write this book. 14 years. He couldn't sell this book on Amazon for many years, but his daughter decided to post video content about this book to help to get a few sales. And this video became viral. People watched this video plus 50 million times. And today this book is bestseller on Amazon. From account with 0 followers, with 0 people who follow this account, video became viral to it's bestseller on Amazon. With simple video, I watched this video. Very simple, nothing special. But I got curiosity. Wow, it's interesting. The author spent 14 years to write book. I need to read it. It's probably good stuff. So can you tell about creating this curiosity and how it's important to create brand awareness to satisfy this EEAT parameter for Google, for users, for anyone?
Yeah, it's a great question, Anatoly. I think part of it is when I think of brand, I always think about the promise that this is the holy grail of brand is what promise you're conveying. So a good example, when your son buys those sneakers from Nike, if Nike wasn't in the room, how would he describe buying those shoes to one of his friends? That's the brand promise, right? So it's the notion that Nike has been successful to get into is he's a little bit more like Cristiano Ronaldo because he has these shoes. He can maybe run a little bit faster. He can, jump a little higher. He can, whatever those things are, and they may be true or they may not be true, but it doesn't really matter. The truth does not matter. What matters is that he thinks that he can jump higher, that he thinks that he can run faster. And so that's the brand promise. Is the reason that he's buying it is because that's the promise that when he buys a Nike, he's going to, in his head, he's going to get those valuable attributes. And Seth Godin has a book, this is probably 7 or 8 years ago, had a book called All Marketers Are Liars. And I think it's a very provocative phrase because it's not that we're liars. It's that you're telling yourself, the user, the customer, your son is telling himself a lie. When he buys these shoes, he's going to run faster. He's going to jump higher. And that's what we want to be able to do when you're successful with brand. It's the same way when you bought that Apple Watch versus a Samsung watch. You told yourself a lie that this watch can do amazing things. It's a status symbol. it is better quality. And when we talk about brand, it's not that we're trying to mislead. We're trying to get the customer to tell themselves that lie, to tell themselves to believe that, in fact, if I buy this product, it has these attributes. And it's really funny. He has a great example, Seth Godin does in his book, on wine glasses. And he shows how, you have a very cheap wine glass, maybe just an ordinary glass or a cup, and then a very, very high end, kind of more expensive wine glasses. And interestingly enough, every time you do these taste tests with, very fancy wine sommeliers and people that know tons about wine, cheap wine, expensive wine, all kinds of wine, when they taste the two glasses and they can see the two glasses, they believe that the wine tastes better in the expensive glass, the one that's shaped for the right wine and all this stuff. But then, in fact, when they should do the same exact test and they do it in a way that they can't see the glass, I don't know how they do this. I think they cover up the glass, but they can't see exactly the details, and they still drink it. They can't tell the difference, right? And so it's just fascinating. It's that the wine companies have been successful in teaching you and having us tell ourselves a lie that the more expensive glass makes the wine taste better. And in fact, like even if you can see the difference, you still believe that it tastes better. It's an amazing, amazing thing. So I think when it comes to brand, what we have to do is help develop that promise for those customers. And this holds in B2B just the same, right? If you're buying HubSpot versus, Pardot or some other marketing automation solution, there's a brand and there's a promise about the help that you'll be able to get, the success that you'll be able to get. I think a lot of us think, when you deal with HubSpot, it's more of an SMB, maybe a mid-market solution. Marketo is more of a mid-market solution. Eloqua or some of the Pardot and some of these are more enterprise. So we're telling ourselves a lie. HubSpot's actually very good at doing some of the enterprise level features. And so those are the things that we have to get articulated to when we think about brand. And so you have to be conscious about all of the little things that go into telling that brand promise, down to the tone of your messages. So even using ChatGPT, you have to tell it, are you a jovial, kind of comedial tone? Are you more serious? Are you more assertive? Are you more formal and informal? And then when it comes to the imagery as well, when you go to the website, is it, more jovial? Is it research based? And so all of these things have to do with, starting to develop that promise of what you see when you come across.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Nick, I opened your LinkedIn profile because I love opening LinkedIn profiles, and I found your message. Very simple. We help you grow. Very simple. I got the feeling like Apple make difference. So I think simplicity is very important today. Yes, because people have no time to figure out in hard content, even if it's valuable. You need to be simple as much as possible. Albert Einstein said this many years ago, and it works today even better because people hate hard content. And I want to ask you about your consulting business. For example, when I created this SEO course with Lily Ray, Jeff Coyle, Mike Phillips, plus 20 well-known experts, I found all of them are better than me in some specific directions. For example, Olga Zar is much better than me in technical optimization. Jeff Coyle is better with creating advanced strategy. Lily Ray is much better than me in EEAT. But anyway, I found companies usually implement 40% of all advice, of all tips that consultants can give them, according to some popular tweets. For example, if a company pays like $10,000 for consultancy, they implement like for 40%, or $6,000 are wasted. Can you tell your methods how to transfer that? It's important to implement, to do, because after seeing your simple quote, I got it. You know how to do it right. Any insights how to transfer data in the right way?
Yeah, it's funny that the quote. It's just one of those things where after working, I think so much of marketing has to do with is growth. It's not all growth. It's not all sort of demand gen and brand, But that's where I really wanted the emphasis to be on grow. In fact, the website is grow.llc. So everything is sort of growth oriented around my consulting business as it relates to B2B, because so much of what these businesses are trying to do is grow quickly. But I think being simple is in fact harder. In fact, I think it's Mark Twain that said if he was writing a letter and it said something to the effect of, I would have wrote a shorter letter if I had more time, which I thought is just it's a really fun quote. I think with ChatGPT, it's interesting. You can limit the amount of text that it provides. You can actually ask it to write things in 50 words or 100 words, or limit the length of sort of your responses. And it's in fact harder to be more concise than it is to be much more verbose. And I think with these tools, we're going to have the ability to be much, much more verbose. And the really good sort of marketing will come from being very concise, being very to the point. So I think that's sort of the key part. And as it comes to your point about the consulting practice, a lot of consultants see this, right? You make a lot of recommendations, and then some of those recommendations are implemented, some of them are not. And so my approach in my consulting business is I use a lot of frameworks and templates. So for example, frameworks for positioning and messaging and content strategy and demand generation. And so the idea is that it's almost like Mad Libs. In other words, it's like fill in the blanks. And so the idea is then they're much more likely to get used, because you can move through the process very quickly. You can reflect on it, and you can implement those details very quickly. I can't say that everything 100% gets used all the time. I don't think that's the case. But by having those kind of frameworks and templates, I think it has a lot better chance to be used and implemented versus having to come up with things, from scratch that might not get used necessarily.
Yeah, nice. I found, that when your customers, clients understand what you do, you can get much better results. For example, if my clients understand SEO, we can go ahead like a cohesive team. We can create cohesive plans and get great results. But if they don't understand, I lead them to my course. Please learn. You need to understand, because it's not like to hire a specialist who will provide the rest. It doesn't work, because creating content, demands experience. If you have no experience, it's hard to overcome your competitors. Any consultants are not magicians. We have no secrets. We have no some special methods, but we can adapt to unique selling proposition, to specific preferences, to find great way how to do it. But you can do it when your clients understand what you do. Nick, let's imagine you started today from scratch without any experience, knowledge, skills. What will you do today to learn more about marketing and AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anatoly. One of the things that I did early in my career was surrounding myself with peers that were at other companies. So for example, when I started running demand generation at a company a few years ago, it was a relatively new role for me. I'd been around it a little bit, but I didn't have any experience managing a team of demand gen managers. And so I live in Austin, Texas, and it's a relatively tech-friendly place. And so I just, reached out to a number of other folks that were at non-competitive companies, and just we did a monthly sort of get together where we'd all get together, and that, at least that's a good way for me in terms of how I learn, is meeting these other folks. We stood up a little. We didn't have Slack at the time; it was more of an email chain. So anytime somebody came across an issue, you could just email the group, and it was a very fast way to learn about new tools, to get across other objections, and to see how other people were doing things. And so that's definitely a great way to be able to do it. Certainly, I like to read a lot of books on business things, and even though they do help you get to sleep once in a while, there's also some good takeaways. I think this generative AI stuff is it's so fast moving, though, that there's not been a lot of content written on it. The irony is it hasn't been written on it yet, and it's changing so fast. So I prefer the vehicle of talking to other people and understanding what they're doing with these tools. Because it's almost and as a consultant, I get to cheat here a little bit. I get to see what one client's doing and another client's doing and another client's doing, and then take what's working and what's not working and apply them to the other clients. And so that's one of the big benefits that I have is being able to talk to lots of people and understand how they're using these different tools. One thing I wanted to mention, Anatoly, you mentioned, you might not be a little bit different than Moz or some of these other SEO folks. I think it brings up a great point, though. In this type of generative AI world, we have to think about positioning in a little bit different way. And I'm a big fan of the tried and true classic sort of positioning, either you're cheaper, faster, or better. And I think understanding that is incredibly important to feed into these generative AI solutions. So, if you're Rolls-Royce, you're not trying to be faster, you're not trying to be cheaper, you're trying to be better, and better in a very specific way, less noise, better quality, all of these things. And so we can't check our brains at the door as marketers. We have to understand the positioning that we're taking as a company and then feed into these generative AI solutions to help us articulate how our positioning is cheaper, faster, better. And so similarly on the SEO front, you might be better at SEO, you might be cheaper, you might be faster, whatever that is. You have to get that fundamental understanding of your competitive landscape and then use that with these tools as well.
Yeah, nice. You remind me Cristiano Ronaldo. Once he said he surrounds himself with positive people with the same interests. If he can't, then he will go alone. So, no, I think, it's a good point. For example, I never cooperate with toxic clients. So if I can feel it, it doesn't matter what kind of money you have, because this money can't cover my health issue, mentally issue. So and the same things. Okay, Nick, my last question about the future of marketing. We have AI that was simple to ignore, hard today, impossible tomorrow. So can you tell what kind of future will be if we have AI in the beginning of this journey? We don't know how things will be updated, probably a lot, because it's only the beginning. ChatGPT, like a few months ago, was appealed. We had some AI tools before, but today it's hot, it's growing, it's updating. I updated my tools with AI. Many companies, I don't know any company that don't think how to update their existing tools with AI. What do you think? What kind of future will be, and how to adapt today to this possible future?
Yeah, that's a great point, Anatoly. I think there's this notion of a 10x developer on the engineering side. So one developer that can create the output that is 10 times as productive as another developer. And when it comes to code and software and things like that, you can write 10 lines of code that's more effective than 100 lines of code. So that notion has existed for some time. In marketing, we haven't really had that. We haven't had the ability, even though marketing automation has helped us scale. This is a completely different level of being able to improve your productivity. And I think that what we'll see is a little bit more senior and experienced marketers that have a little bit more of an astute understanding of positioning and messaging and brand, and some of these more right brain activities are going to be able to use and leverage generative AI and other AI tools to be 10x more productive. And so as a marketer, and if you're a junior marketer, it's starting to understand and develop some of those softer skills around empathy, around brand, around positioning and messaging, and understanding tone, so that you're able to use these tools to be 10x more productive. And we may see some consolidation of teams, but I think we'll also see the individuals be massively more productive. And so we'll start to be able to leverage these tools. I was working with a client just today, and they were going through their website, and you can go through and update, come up with 10 different versions of headlines and run them through some AI generative tools that will predict which one will be the most effective. And then they're running A/B tests on those, and they're doing the same thing for their ad campaigns and their email campaigns. So it's like the level of sophistication in terms of moving through these is extremely quick. And I think that's phase one, is that first version of okay, copy and paste from ChatGPT, put it into marketing automation, run an A/B test, and we'll start to see, phase two will be all of this stuff integrated, and it'll start to optimize and run campaigns that are automatically optimized towards pipeline generation or deal creation. And so it's going to take a sophisticated marketer to understand all of those different dynamics at play but we're going to see this dramatically speed up, and it's going to be fun to watch. And I'd encourage people to, one of the best tips I've heard is just keep ChatGPT open in a browser. And then just anything you're doing, if you're writing or thinking or doing, just copy and paste it in there and see what it comes up with. And it's amazing how much faster you can come up with responses and what that starts to look like. And sometimes you forget that it's even out there. And so just keeping it open in a browser it's a simple, free, easy trick to be able to do.
Nice, great. Yeah, love it. Nick, it's a big pleasure to get you on my show, to learn from you. Tell our audience the best way how to keep learning from you, how to reach out to you, how to get your consultancy service, and anything that can connect you with others.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. So the website's growth.llc. So that's a pretty easy website to go look up. And but usually probably more of my content I'm putting out on LinkedIn these days. So it's just / Nick Bhavsar. You can see the name on the title here in terms of my LinkedIn. But yeah, I'd love to have folks reach out if they're exploring ChatGPT or other AI tools, and share with me if you've got some new tools. This stuff is changing, as you pointed out, so fast. It's hard to stay on top of this, and I'd love to just hear about what some of the use cases are that folks are using some of the newer tools. It'd be fun to hear from folks.
Nice. Guys, you can find all these links in the description below. Listen us on Apple, Google, Spotify. Thanks again for your time. A big pleasure. Love it. So valuable. Guys, you need to follow Nick because you can see a lot of value. Okay, thanks a lot for listening and watching us.